This new lockdown will be in place for at least a month.
Pete, for the next 4 weeks, 300,000 people who live in Melbourne's 10 postcodes will be living under Stage 3 restrictions. Now, under the rules, no one is allowed to leave their house unless it's for an essential purpose. This includes grocery shopping, exercise, for medical reasons or for study and work. Everyone else in Victoria have been told that they can't visit these areas. Now, it comes as Victoria has seen a significant rise in coronavirus cases, most coming from these 10 postcodes that have been locked down. The Premier has warned that if the situation gets worse, he won't just be locking down suburbs, he'll be locking down the whole state. This is going to cause a lot of heartache for local businesses who have just started to reopen, families that have planned regional holidays, and people just starting to get back to work. Now, Premier Daniel Andrews says that police will be out patrolling these areas and those breaching the rules will be fined.
Many of the main transport corridors in and out of these suburbs will be the subject of booze bus type checks. So not necessarily every vehicle, but vehicles will be stopped randomly, but in an organised and coordinated way.
And Gabriella, the Premier has admitted breaches in the state's hotel quarantine system are behind the outbreaks.
That's right. Daniel Andrews says it's disappointing and deeply frustrating that this quarantine system has gone so wrong. At least 50 cases can be traced back to the quarantine hotels where security staff broke the rules. Now, the Premier has launched a formal inquiry to get to the bottom of exactly what happened. Daniel Andrews has pretty little confidence in Melbourne's quarantine system and has now requested that all overseas flights to Melbourne get diverted to other cities in Australia.
OK, Gabriella Power with the latest from Melbourne. Thank you. Meanwhile, the Queensland border battle is finally over after the Palaszczuk Government finally announced all states, except of course Victoria, can visit the Sunshine State from Friday week. Brendan Smith is at State Parliament for us this morning. Brendan, the Premier has been praised for the decision.
Yeah, she has indeed, Pete. Of course, it was months in the making. People finally getting some clarity yesterday as to when borders exactly will reopen. As you said, Friday week is the day when all states can re-enter Queensland except Victoria. And from this Friday, from Friday noon, anyone entering from Victoria, including Queensland residents, will either be turned around at the border or they will be required to self-quarantine for that 14-day period at their own expense. And if they are found doing the wrong thing, they could face hefty fines. A border declaration will also need to be made once the border is open to all other states. And if that is falsified, people could face fines of up to $4,000. But the Premier in her press conference yesterday really did hit out at a lot of naysayers, including the Prime Minister.
These border wars have got to stop, and I think a national leader should have been able to bring all of the states and territories together. Frankly, I'm a bit sick that Queensland has been singled out. Frankly, I don't think it's good enough, and I've been silent for a long time, and I will not be silenced.
Now, Pete, obviously quite a smart political move given it's just months out from the state election. One would think that if the Premier did delay those border openings, businesses would really turn on the Premier. But of course, when she was making mention of those naysayers, she really did turn to the fact that the Prime Minister or the LNP isn't targeting South Australia. Of course, that's an LNP government right now, and Stephen Marshall is choosing not to go off with those restrictions in July 20. So very interesting there. But good news, of course, for businesses who've been crying out for more customers to be able to enter their stores. You know, on Friday as well, an easing of other restrictions like weddings, funerals and parties can have up to 100 people attending.
All right, Brendan Smith in Brisbane. Thank you. From Brendan to Kenny Heatley at New South Wales Health Headquarters this morning. Kenny, despite the growing concern in Victoria, New South Wales businesses and residents are waking up to changed rules this morning.
Yes, that's right. It's not exactly Christmas in July, but it will mean a big difference to people and businesses across New South Wales from today. Let's go through some of those changes for you now. Community sport is back. That includes children and adult sport. 50-person cap on indoor venues will end as long as people are seated. The 4 square metre rule applies. Restrictions on indoor and outdoor funerals to be eased as well. Limits on household visitors and outside gatherings will remain, though, at 20 people. And stadiums can have a capacity of 25%, meaning if there's 40,000 capacity, 10,000 people are allowed into the stand. To public transport, those capacities are effectively doubling, but they're still going to be using the green dot to allow to guide people as to the safest place to sit, and you need to leave a spare seat in between you. Music festivals and nightclubs, though, they are still off limits because the health advice is that they still pose a high risk of the virus spreading. But if community transmission rates remain low, then they may open up in August. Premier Gladys Berejiklian has thanked the people of New South Wales for their patience and hard work in containing the virus, but says that the main threat to New South Wales at the moment is not Victoria, but people's complacency.
Things can change very quickly in terms of the rate of community transmission, and I urge everybody, I've noticed in and around my movements that people are starting to relax a little bit too much for my liking. Don't relax. Assume everybody in and around you has the disease. You have to.
Now, Pete, New South Wales Chief Health Officer Dr Kerry Chan has ruled out New South Wales using the saliva test. They're going to stick to the swab test, which has been working well in the state so far.